from the Ticats Audio Network. This is the CFL This Week with Bubba O'Neil.
The finish line for the CFL second season is definitely in sight, yet there is still so much to sort out. Tiger Cats or Roughriders? Can the Redblacks write a Cinderella story? Blue Jays out, Argonauts in. And do quarterbacks really require better protection from the referee? These topics and many more next on the CFL This Week on the Ticats Audio Network. Good day or good night, folks. I'm your host, Bubba O'Neil. With me this week, he covers all things Argos with Sportsnet. Thanks for joining us, David Morassutti.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm always happy to join, even if it's in enemy territory.
He really is enemy territory. I hope we meet in the playoffs somehow. But hey, having something to say about that, maybe this fella. And he rides alongside AJ Jakovac on that Ottawa Redblacks broadcast. TSN 1200 in the nation's capital. Appreciate you, Nolan MacMillan.
Thanks, Bubba. It's good to see you again.
All right, first things first, folks. Listeners and watchers, you could win a trip to the Ticats October 29th away game in Ottawa with Journey Rewards. Simply hit ticats.ca/journey-rewards to enter to win 2 tickets on Via Rail, hotel and game tickets, plus a chance at other prizes, including an autographed Ticats jersey or a $250 gift card to the Ticats shop. Go on the road with the Ticats to Ottawa with Journey Rewards. All right, fellas, let's get busy. Let's get busy here. David, kind of to you first here. Everyone's talking about it across the nation. Now, the Blue Jays shorter than expected postseason run. Will it lead to improved attendance and viewership on television for those Toronto Argonauts who look like they are the class of the Eastern Division?
Yeah, we were all wondering about that game on Saturday with whether or not the Argos would even consider moving it, because to have the Jays and Argos at the same time just didn't seem like a recipe for success. Surprisingly, there were more fans at that game than many of us in the press box were expecting. We were expecting below 10,000. They actually had 11, which doesn't sound like a big number but considering the circumstances, it was actually not too bad. It just shows that there is a diehard core of Argos fans that will go regardless of what's happening in the city. That being said, unfortunately, with the Jays being out, you'd expect that maybe there'd be a shift where more people come, but then you got the Raptors and the Leafs pretty much starting up, and that will take some of those Jays viewers over to them as well. That just continues to be the Argos issues. They got so many teams that they go up against for viewership. TV viewership suggests that there's still a good number of fans that watch games. It's just getting them to the stadium that's always been the problem. They do that final home game. They are making a big push. I do know that they're doing some nice little promotions to get fans out for that final home game. I am expecting a better number, especially if this game with Montreal potentially could have some, implications with home field advantage and first in the East, if that ends up being a possibility.
Nolan, does it surprise you? I mean, I've always believed that whether you are in Canada or the United States, anywhere around the world, when your team is a winner, people will show up. Yet that seems to be, it's like the story the Argonauts continue to fight because they've had some good teams over the years.
Absolutely, and I think that they're coming on strong here down the stretch as well. I went to a game earlier during the exhibition. Stadium wasn't very full, but it was a good environment for sure. I think the most discouraging thing and what really doesn't translate well on TV is from the broadcast booth, the background is completely empty, the upper deck is completely empty. And I mean, that doesn't instill any excitement in anybody to come out and be part of that atmosphere. So I think that it's kind of a cycle that they need to jumpstart in order to get the stadium full and build some excitement that way, because it really does not translate well on a broadcast when you have an empty stadium.
David, that's a concern I've always had. And I don't, both of us have friends at TSN, the broadcaster for the Canadian Football League. And I don't know is it not possible? Because I think even when there are 10 or 11,000 fans, most fans seem to be sitting on the side where we, the media, sit. I guess that's the covered stands or the majorly covered stands. And I just think, Nolan raises a great point. The optics of it are incredible. And when you see a stadium that's 3/4 full or full, it just looks better than that empty one side. Can they not shoot it the other way?
I've thought about that. I really did. And I don't know if it's just because having everything on that side with all the cables and stuff that they need to transmit, maybe that's just logistically, that's how they have to do it. But yeah, I think BMO Field gets a bad rap, and a lot have been said about the crowd and the noise. But if you see from where we see, it's full, it's loud. Like the fans really do bring it. And it doesn't do justice when you see, as Noel mentioned, that other side that just looks bare and empty. And the other problem with BMO Field is in the summertime, that east section is just plastered in the sun. So even if you have tickets there, a lot of fans don't want to sit there just because it's such a tough place to be. And that's actually part of the reason why the Argos try to get more evening games in the summer so that it doesn't become an issue. I just feel like if you find, and the Argos have tried in the past to get promotions like $20 tickets with, just some sort of promotion to get people on that side so that they can at least have somewhat of a full section. I think you just have to do your best to try to fill that section as much as possible. I'm not saying giveaway tickets. The Argos have made it a point to say they don't want to give away tickets, partly because, those who have supported the team through season tickets, it would feel like a bit disrespectful for them that that the Argos all of a sudden are just giving away tickets, but make it in a way that will entice more people, because people are now looking for cheap entertainment options in terms of affordable. I feel like that, and Argos tickets are not expensive, but you have to find ways now, especially coming out of the pandemic, to intrigue people to come to sporting events. And if you can make it an affordable experience, tickets might be cheap, but the rest of the experience is not. Food, drinks, parking, even transit can be, the GO train is not expensive, but it is a trek for a lot of people. So you got to try to entice people in other ways to come to that stadium. Once they do that, once people get there, I think they're going to enjoy the atmosphere. It's always a great atmosphere there.
Yeah, I agree with you, because I feel like, the stadium is loud. Games have been exciting. Hey, last year's Eastern final, the snow falling, the way the game changed. I know it didn't go in the Argonauts' favor, but the first half certainly did. The Ticats wrestled the game away in the second. It was I won't forget that game anytime soon. Great crowd on hand. The atmosphere was great. It's a mystifying thing to me. Nolan, they're not. It's been tough for victories for the Red Blacks for most of the season, yet people still continue to show up to TD Stadium.
Yes, absolutely, and they've made it a destination. Lansdowne Park is a destination, and I think that Ottawa was very much glad to see the Red Blacks come back. I think that for the Argos to do something with that upper deck, I can't help but think of the single game betting. The CFL was super, super positive on how that was going to save the league and reinvigorate things and bring some revenue. I think that maybe you could implement that as, this is almost the bettors lounge up here on the upper deck, and see if you can't drum up some interest in that way, because people are all for single game betting. And I think you can make some really interesting prop bets there in person.
Let's stick with you, Nolan, on this one here, because I know as a Red Blacks broadcaster and fan, I'm sure that you're watching the Tiger Cats really carefully. And, that was a really impressive victory for them, really gutty victory over the Roughriders last weekend. Did their play convince you that, they're going to earn that CFL crossover, or at least eliminate the crossover, get the CFL's last postseason seed? Are you sold on the Ticats, I guess is what I'm asking you.
I'm not sold on the Ticats. Two reasons why. One, I think the Roughriders are really in a downward spiral right now. They've dropped 5 in a row. So I don't think that showed me enough. And two, I'm not sure about Dane Evans this year. I'm not confident in him. I think he's had a really tough year. Hopefully he's turning it on down the stretch for you guys, but I'm not sold on him because at the end of the day, that's the most important position. And however your quarterback plays, that's going to dictate your result.
David, you're a neutral observer sitting there in first place. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I was impressed with the Ticats in that last game against Saskatchewan. They knew that the running game was going for them, so they stuck with the running game. But my concern is when the other teams eventually stop the running game, can Dane Evans take that team on his back and win them a game? And he just hasn't really done it consistently enough this year, and that's what makes it tough for me to fully go on board with Hamilton, especially their next game against Calgary. That's the one for me that will tell me whether this is something that Hamilton can actually get to the playoffs, because they control their destiny. They have that one game in hand on Saskatchewan. That victory was huge for them, but they still have to win it out, in my opinion. And as we just found out, the Ottawa Redblacks are not going to make it easy on any opponent to win this season. So, if Hamilton were to come away with the win against Calgary, then I can, at least it'll give them the best chance to keep that crossover from being a possibility. But I think Dane Evans is going to have to be the one to get them there, and just that's tough for me to go fully on board with.
Well, last Tiger Cat quarterback to get Hamilton a win at McMahon Stadium, 2004, Danny McManus, in like some crazy 41-38 game. It goes back that far. That's been a house of horrors for the Hamilton Tiger Cats, but at some point things have to change. So let's see what happens there. Right back to you, Nolan, for this, because I guess they really do work in tandem together. Hey, interim head coach Bob Dyce really earning league-wide and praise for the Red Blacks' big win over the Alouettes in Montreal on Thanksgiving Day. Do you really think there's a chance here of a Cinderella playoff run for Ottawa, considering they still have two more games, a home and home series versus Hamilton remaining?
I think, they would have to win out, and they would have to have some other teams lose. So I don't think that it's going to work out for them. But I think that it's important to build momentum for next year. And Bob Dyce he wants to be the head coach in Ottawa. So Sean Burke is going to be watching very closely, because if things don't work out with Bob Dyce, that's probably going to be his job if he ends up hiring him. So I think that they showed up and they played for him, and that was great. But again, back to the quarterback, Nick Arbuckle hasn't been consistent. Caleb Evans hasn't shown that he's ready to take that lead role. So again, if you're one-dimensional with the run, people are going to force the quarterback to beat you, and I don't think they have that guy right now.
Their defense certainly seems to be stepping up this season. Former Tiger Cat Lorenzo Mullen having a great season.
Absolutely. They've been able to get after the quarterback, and that helps everybody. The other thing that I think is very interesting, that they beat Montreal twice, both times against Trevor Harris. Last year, all three of their wins came against Trevor Harris, once in Edmonton and twice in Edmonton and once in Montreal. So I don't know if they just need to play Trevor Harris three more times or what, but the defense has definitely been showing up. And like Bob Dyce's specialty, the special teams have been outstanding there the entire time he's been there. And I think that's really the reason that the team has rallied around him and that they love him so much there. It's because he demands high standard, and he's able to get it.
Mr. Morassutti, are you again looking from a top here from the Argos standpoint? They have to be watching carefully what's going on here. The Red Blacks beat the Argonauts this season, did they not?
Yes, they did. Back at home, back in the summertime, when Caleb Evans just had an amazing game for them. Mm-hmm. That's the thing, right? It's if Ottawa's offense can find a way to just get a rhythm going and put up points, that defense is good enough to win them games. It's the offense that really, for me, I'm a little concerned about, and I think just that hole they dug was really just too big for them. Anything is obviously possible. They beat Montreal, where I think many would not have expected that. So that can give that Ottawa team a little bit of hope. And they're going to, at this point, they have they're just going to play as loose as they can, and that's a dangerous team. You don't, when you go up against a team that has nothing to lose at this point, maybe that reinvigorates something, but I just think the hole they dug is a little bit too much. But I do like the fact that they're building towards something there. This isn't just a throwaway year for the Ottawa Redblacks. So even if they don't make it, I think you just got to build for next season. And I think that there's encouraging signs there, but yeah, there's still work to be done.
Nolan, is it really just down to the quarterback play? I mean, I will say this, as much as I love Jeremiah Masoli, I believe they were a winless football team even before he got hurt in that crazy, memorable game in Regina.
Absolutely. But I mean, look at the teams that are at Winnipeg. Claros is absolutely lighting it up down the stretch. I don't think anybody, if he continues to play like that, they're not going to be able to be beaten. And Ottawa went toe-to-toe with Winnipeg the first 2 games of the season. And some people think that they probably should have won that first game for sure. So ultimately, I mean, it's the guy that has the ball in his hand. He has the biggest outcome on the game. Obviously, it's the ultimate team sport. But I've seen it myself, having somebody like Henry Burris at quarterback, having somebody like Trevor Harris, they have a huge impact on the game and even on the preparation and getting everybody else ready and getting everybody else on the same page in order to perform.
David, who would you rather see the Argos play? Redblacks, Alouettes, or the Ticats?
I go with the Ticats, in my opinion. You know what? Like, Ottawa's defense is one that's, can go either way. They've made a lot of close games with Toronto. Obviously, their offense, I think the Argos defense could manage the Ottawa Redblacks offense. But with Hamilton, for me, it's, the quarterback play just isn't there. And I think Toronto's secondary likes to play against Hamilton, likes to create those turnovers.
Peters certainly does.
Yeah, Jamal Peters certainly does. And yeah, I just think the Argos, they've found their way to their formula to beat Hamilton. Montreal's the one I would definitely not want. They will eventually have to play Montreal. I think, that's almost a given. I think defensively, the Argos will match up well against them. We'll see if the offense can put up the points. The Argos offense has always been the thing for me that can make or break their season. But I think, yeah, you definitely want to see Hamilton. If I'm going to put it in order, I'll say Hamilton, Ottawa, then Montreal, just because obviously Montreal being in the position that they're in, and they've played Toronto tough at times. So it's never an easy out against Montreal.
Ticats fans, it's time to ride on our strength. From now until Thursday, purchase 4 eligible Hercules passenger or light truck tires to receive a $100 Ticats reward card and be entered to win our road trip sweepstakes. Available at participating Active Green and Ross, Ontario locations, or visit HerculesTire.com/AGR rewards. Let's go to the top here where those Winnipeg Blue Bombers, they're just sailing along. They certainly have sealed the deal on top seed in the West. And you know what? Without a meaningful game when they host the West Final, and that is November 13th, guys. That's more than a month away. They only have 2 games left. How does Mike O'Shea manage that roster and playing time, Mike?
Like, for me, when you look at Winnipeg, they're a team that's been there. They've been in this situation before. I think they'll know exactly what they want. I think for me, like Claros, you can't just totally sit him. You got. I always think that players, and I mean, I'm not a player. I've never played, but players to me have always said that they want to play. If they're feeling good, they want to play. You also have to think about the future and safeguard for any potential injuries. And they totally understand that. But I think you just can't fully shut it down because it's so tough. The Argos did that last year where they shut it down in their final game. It felt like that did them worse because they just had to find a way to switch it back on again. And I feel like that's not the right way to go. You want to make sure that you're going, especially when you have that bye, you want to make sure that you're not, the rest factor won't be an issue come playoff time.
No, I hear that all the time. It's an argument that will go on no matter what football league is that you're playing in and when you're a first place team and that argument comes up of rest over rotation and repetition. I mean, it's an argument that will go on forever, but where do you see the Blue Bombers sitting here in this equation? Because they really have. I mean, they've been the class of the league all season long. They have nothing to prove, whether it's 3 losses or 4 losses or 5 losses this season.
Right. Yep. Absolutely. There's just one game that they're worried about winning. And I think ultimately it's more art than science. I don't think Mike O'Shea is dogmatic at all. I think that he is going to take the pulse of, he's got a veteran team. So ultimately, I think he's going to ask the players what they want to do. How are you feeling as a player? Do you need to play this game or do you need the rest? So, I mean, they've got a lot of veteran players on the offensive line, and in the defense, they got Big Hill, Willie Jefferson, Stanley Bryant. I could see some of those guys getting a rest. And I think that those guys have the experience and the ability that having a week off is only going to help them perform better in the playoffs. Is
there such a thing, Nolan, as getting rusty? Does that really happen?
It does, but I mean, these guys have been at it since July. So they've been practicing 4 times a week, playing 14 games. If they just practice for the next month, I don't think that they will come out too rusty. Obviously, with quarterbacks and receivers, there's a lot more timing involved with that. But in terms of an offensive lineman or defensive player, these guys are locked in. These guys are watching film every day. These guys are at the facility and practicing all the time. I don't think that a month of sort of taking care of the body is gonna come back to bite them.
And I think, David, for them, really, I mean, even if you are coming out a little rusty in that West final, you also, as an opposing team, have to deal with that crazy crowd at IG Field.
Yeah, the home field advantage has always been there for Winnipeg. They thrive off of that. And it's the weather too, right? You know, some players are just not used to playing in those conditions, especially in Winnipeg. So I think that will be a factor as well for them. Yeah, but I think knowing that they'll have home field, it gives them that comfort. It gives them that extra confidence that, you know, the crowd can play a huge factor in getting the team up if they're not exactly firing on all cylinders. I think that's always an underrated aspect of playing in Winnipeg.
Guys, it was really interesting to see the way the BC Lions have handled this. I mean, yesterday they released this little, it was cloudy, it was foggy. It looked like Lisa LaFlamme's video. I couldn't really see what was going on. It was like a little 6-second blurb of injured quarterback Nathan Rourke throwing the football at practice. He's been off with 7 weeks with that Liz Frank foot injury. But I got to ask you this. They're in this big battle with the Stampeders for second place to host that West semifinal and have maybe the best shot of getting at the Bombers. If Nathan Rourke, and we've seen him at 100%, if he's even 75 to 90% for that final regular season game or even for the postseason, David, do you start this fella?
I think if he's got the green light from the doctors and if he feels good, you start him. I think BC has put in so much stock on trying to win this year. You know, when he went down with the injury, boom, they went and got Vernon Adams. They wanted to keep this season alive, and they understand that losing out on potentially hosting a playoff game, you know, new owner wants to have that revenue from playoff tickets, and I think they want to keep this momentum of, you know, bringing in the fans and having them something to cheer for. And the playoffs are, I mean, I would expect a big crowd if that's the case. And what better way also to sell your fans on the season, saying Nathan Rourke not only coming back, but he came back from an injury that some thought was going to take him out for the rest of the season. You got to be smart about it. If the doctors are concerned at all, you have to think about the long-term future of Nathan Rourke. But if he feels good and the doctor gives the green light, there should be no reason why Nathan Rourke shouldn't be on that field.
Nolan, it was amazing because I actually thought the BC Lions were keeping the Winnipeg Blue Bombers honest.
Yes.
But since his injury, they go 2-4, and they did have to go out there and get the likes of a Vernon Adams because Antonio Pipkin was not the answer. Mm-hmm. They might have not won a game if they continued to go down that path. But what do you do here? Like, I mean, and I know players, they sometimes say they're their own worst enemies and saying, yeah, coach, get me in there. But right. I mean, but this is a guy that's still probably going to be with the Lions, unless there's some crazy NFL deal that's out there, that he's still under contract for next year. So what do you do with him?
Well, I've had the Liz Frank injury myself, so I can relate to what he's going through. And I saw the video. I just don't think that there's any way that he's going to be ready to play at the level that they need him to be, and also to be mobile enough so that he doesn't set himself up for something potentially worse. But ultimately, I mean, if he is able to come back, obviously you want him in there. And I think same thing with Mike O'Shea. I've played for Rick Campbell. He trusts the players. He's going to ask him, are you good? Are you able to play? So I think he's going to leave it up to him. But I just, having had the injury and seeing that 4-second clip of him throwing, I don't see how it's going to be possible. And I don't think that it's in his best interest.
Nolan, can you give us, and I'm glad you said what you just said there, because I think there's a lot I think everyone's calling it a foot injury, but it's defined as a Liz Frank. Can you just tell people exactly what that injury is?
It's a crushing injury on your foot where your first and second metatarsals are separated from the ligament. So your arch is basically collapsed. And so in order to fix that, you have to be non-weight bearing so that the ligament heals. And there's various different severities of the injury. For me, I had to have my foot screwed back together so that the ligament would heal, and be completely non-weight bearing for 8 months. And I didn't really feel normal for about a year. So wow. It was a very, very tough injury. I was able to come back and play a couple more seasons, but it's a career ender for some guys. So the foot is a very hard area to heal because it doesn't get much blood flow. And just seeing him on there and seeing how he was pivoting on it and just seeing how he's moving, I don't think that it's going to be possible this year.
And as a quarterback, I mean, we're always talking about technique. He needs to step into throws, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And he needs to be able to run and move. And for me, like if I have a club foot out there at right guard, nobody's going to really notice. But I mean, if he's rolling out or running for his life, he needs to be 100% mobile.
And as a guy that's been on the field there at that level, is it fair to say, and I don't want to say mean, but when an opposing team knows about injury, they're going after you, right? Like
absolutely,
fair to say, right?
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, it's in the scouting report. Everybody knows. People are very interested in how he's doing and how he's feeling, and so everybody wants to win, and you play to win the game. So, it's common knowledge.
David, because he really has been this. I think the story of the season. Even a guy that's probably going to play just over half of the season. I mean, I made that much headlines, not just in this country, but on both sides of the border in terms of his play.
Yeah, I mean, he was the biggest story in the CFL, and for good reason. I think the CFL has been not only wanting a Canadian quarterback to step up and show that there are capable players north of the border, even if they go and play south of the border, that they can represent this country in that way. But just somebody that brought that dynamic ability that I feel like that the CFL has been missing for a while. Just that we've got good quarterbacks, but I think we've just been missing that, stellar quarterback and a quarterback that doesn't just do it in the pocket, one that, can get out, make big plays with his legs. And maybe that's another issue with the injuries, because that, Nathan Rourke does like to, go and have those big runs. So that's something to keep an eye on as well. But yeah, I just think that this was a story that the CFL needed big time. I know that the thought about him going south of the border was, not one that a lot of fans were wanting to entertain, because they want to keep Nathan Rourke here, and that's very fair. But I also think it brings more credibility to the CFL to see somebody play so well here. And if he goes down and he plays well there too, it just adds to the credibility to this league that I feel like a lot of people, and if you ask someone in Toronto, the CFL needs a little more credibility. No, what better way than to see a player go and play dynamite here and can also do it south of the border.
Let's stay with quarterbacks, guys. The National Football League, we've seen it just in its past weekend of games. Monday Night Football, it became a huge topic of conversation. By the way, the referees and the league, I guess, have a lot to do with it in protection of quarterbacks with a real strict set of rules on defensive players and how they rough up the quarterback, how they sack the quarterbacks, hitting them after throwing. Nolan, do you think the CFL should follow this lead, or have the NFL gone a little bit too far?
Well, I think if you ask Matthew Stafford, I'd say that they haven't gone far enough. But I think that they have gone a bit overboard. Ultimately, the quarterback, he's out there like everybody else. I mean, having the strike zone and limiting the headshots or the shots below the knee, I think that that's acceptable. I think preventing guys from even landing on the quarterback, I think that that's maybe taking it a bit too far. And some of these calls, I mean, as a viewer, you don't want to see any penalties at all. It disrupts the flow of the game, and it impacts the outcome. And so if it's even a marginal call, I think it negatively impacts the game to have that happen.
David, it's been a hot topic. I mean, and defensive players are actually speaking out now saying, isn't this football? How am I supposed to do my job?
Yeah, and Troy Aikman had a few words about that in his broadcast on Monday night. And like, I do think that, it's hard to find that line, right? That balance that you want. I think the calls were ridiculous that were made because quarterbacks expect to be hit, and it's not going to feel good. Like, I think with what happened with Tua, the NFL went from, they're on high alert just because of everything that happened with that situation. But that also was more so, the NFL, the team, the player, they kind of brushed off in something that was serious.
The concussion protocol you're talking about.
Like the concussion protocol of that, you have to protect players from themselves in those situations as well. Like, but when it comes to the pass, roughing the passer, we've seen it in the CFL too, where guys get and teams have had to challenge those calls. I think that's where the CFL gets it right, is that, if it's really not a roughing the passer call and the coach has a challenge, they're going to challenge it. And I think that's probably the good thing about the CFL, and that the NFL really doesn't do well enough. And that's really the NFL's fault, because, they can challenge a lot of things, but they can't challenge the ones that, can have a big impact on the game. So I think the CFL, at least they have that to give themselves a little bit of cushion that the NFL does not have. But yeah, I think that, have to be careful that, quarterbacks, and I know I talked to quarterbacks, I talked to McLeod Bethel Thompson, he expects to get hit, and he expects it to be it's a tough physical sport. He understands that. You have to just find, I think players just need to be proper, need to know what are the boundaries that they can go with. And once they do that, I think they always find a way to adapt.
No, it's tough because, I mean, you talk about it. I think you're really correct in saying that we don't, the least amount of penalties, the better. The least we see the stripes, yes, the better, less effect on the game. As you said, the time commitment that it takes to analyze, sometimes review a call. It does. It's slow. It really, really does hurt pace of play. I think the league, in the Canadian game, at least, needs to be complimented. I can count on 2 occasions this year, if we're going to even slip to the concussion issue, where the spotters said, hey, that guy, Trevor Harris, the Montreal Alouettes in that crazy game, late the drive against the Tiger Cats, pulling Trevor Harris, and virtually what was the second to last play of the game. So it looks like they're doing their job, is I guess what I'm trying to say.
Absolutely. And I think with any of this stuff is you just need to be decisive. I mean, you're having an extended review over whether or not it's roughing or not. At the end of the day, I mean, there's an element of human error in officiating, and that's been part of the game. I don't know if they're trying to remove that as part of the game, but as a fan, I'm okay with that. I'm not okay with the 5-minute review of whether or not he hit him in the neck or the head.
Yeah, and it's tough because I think, and you're right there, David, the fact that, I mean, Tom Brady was asked about that flag in that controversial call on Sunday, and he basically said, I don't throw the flags. Really? Because I actually, when you looked in the guy's eyes, I think he was a little surprised that there was a roughing the passer call. But you certainly have to feel, really tough. I mean, it's hard enough, I think, to be a cornerback, to protect players, watching wide receivers and, connecting from long bombs and stuff. But now you got these defensive linemen, David. I mean, they have to be so frustrated on, because for the defensive lineman, it's get after the runner and get after the quarterback.
And not put yourself in a position where if you're going to get it to the quarterback and you're worried about how you're hitting them and you miss out on a tackle, like that looks bad on them as well, because they might want to go and hit a certain way, but then they're like, oh, am I going to get a flag for this? Is it all going to be worth it at the end? I think there's always some, players have to always think twice at times with that. But yeah, no, especially at a time where, the league itself wants to make sure that the offense thrives. What better way to make the offense thrive than to make sure that the quarterback can stay upright, and also that the quarterback isn't, getting hurt or getting, taken out of the game. But I think, defensive players always have a tough. They always are one of the more frustrated when they make a tackle. They think it's good, and then they see the yellow flag, and they just kind of they're beside themselves. And sometimes, it's emotion that plays into it, and sometimes there's legitimacy to it, especially when you have replays, all these different angles. And I think some people also have to keep in mind that in real time, it looks one way to the referee. As Nolan says, these people are human. They see things one way. But then when you slow it down and you see, actually was not that bad. That's the tough part for the referees. They can't slow it down in real time. They can only see what they see in real time. I think that's something that players and fans need to realize at times, because this game is getting fast. It's getting faster. These players are getting stronger. It's tough to manage it in those circumstances sometimes.
Nolan, you've seen it and played it, been part of it. It is quicker than the TV can really illustrate, is it not?
That's why you got to get out to BMO Field and see for yourself.
No, hey, do you sell to? Are you a salesman? David, get this guy, hook him up.
I'll tell the Argos, though, if they're looking for a little help in the marketing department, they got Nolan MacMillan ready with ideas.
Doing some work out of the nation's capital. Hey guys, thank you so much for the work you put into this week's CFL this week, and for you officials out there. After we bashed you last week, we're giving you lots of love this week. You guys are doing a great job, for crying out loud. Better so much than our friends in the 4-down game. Hey folks, you've been listening to the CFL this week on the Tiger Cats Audio, on the Tiger Cats Audio Network. Of course, you know to catch us on all your podcast catchers, and we're always available on YouTube for you with a new edition that pops out every Monday. Nolan MacMillan, where do we find you if the fans are happy or not happy with you, or even the Argos want to contact you? How do they do so?
Find me on Twitter. I'm active on Twitter.
At
Noel, NOL _MacMillan. Beautiful.
David, doing a great job with those Argonauts, and they're having a fine season. How do we contact with you for a little Argos coverage?
Just find me on Twitter at @_Morassutti, and I'm also on Substack, so you can go and find a lot of my stuff there as well. And also, once we get close to the CFL playoffs, Sportsnet, we're going to be pushing that coverage. So also find me doing some stuff there as well.
Well, I'm glad. I'm really glad. No more Blue Jays, so it's time to prop up that CFL on the other network as well too. My old home, I'd let you know that too as well. Thank you so much there, guys. Hey, folks, again, as I said, we're with you every Monday. Why don't you join us, please? We much appreciate all kinds of content as we get down to the stretch drive of the CFL season. Great content for you to check out here on the Ticats Audio Network. So we appreciate your viewership and listenership. This has been the CFL This Week on the Ticats Audio Network.
The CFL This Week with Bubba O'Neil. Subscribe, like, and get the deepest takes on Canada's game every Monday.